think first of all, we're going to talk about why we're here. And clearly, Ukraine, we heard from President Zelensky, is dominating proceedings here. There's been lots of talk about Russia stepping up action in recent weeks, that there could be a new winter offensive. Do you have any knowledge of that? And how concerned are you about these recent attacks?
Well, that's why meeting here today with our Northern European partners and allies is so important. It was great to hear from President Zelensky about their needs, and the UK has played a leading role in providing Ukraine with the military support that they require to repel Russian aggression and indeed push back and regain the territory which is rightfully theirs. That was a topic of our conversations here today. I'm pleased to say that there's widespread support amongst our Northern European allies to continue supporting Ukraine. We stand united in that motivation. Our resolve is strong, and Zelensky and Ukraine will continue to get the support that they need. It's something that the United Kingdom and everyone in it should feel enormously proud of, the part that we've played.
Let's talk about domestic issues, strikes first of all. It is entirely possible this week, Prime Minister, that people might needlessly die because of this strike action. Many people saying, why will you not sit down with the unions and talk about pay and ensure that people get the healthcare they deserve ahead of Christmas?
Well, it's really important to me that the government is always acting reasonably and indeed fairly and making the right long-term decisions for the country. And that's been our approach throughout the pay-setting negotiations with the public sector. Now, our door is always open. The Health Secretary has been very clear with that. Of course, we're always happy to sit down and talk to people to try and work through difficult challenges like this. That's always been the case. Now, when it comes to pay, it's because these things are difficult that we have an independent process. We have an independent body that makes recommendations to the government about what reasonable and fair pay settlements are. Now, the government accepted those recommendations in full across the public sector, even though in many cases those recommendations were higher than what the government had originally suggested, and indeed higher than what many people in the private sector were receiving. But the government increased its offer so it could accept those independent recommendations in full. I thought that was the reasonable and the fair thing to do, because it's really important that we combat inflation. It's inflation which is making everybody in the UK's life difficult. I'm determined to grip inflation, to reduce it, and part of us doing that is having a responsible and fair approach to pay, and that's what we're doing.
Can you reassure or guarantee that people will not die this week because of these strikes? I mean, we are talking about paramedics walking out and nurses have been on strike.
Yeah, well, I'm really disappointed to see that the unions are calling these strikes, particularly at Christmas, particularly when it has such an impact on people's day-to-day lives with the disruption it causes and the impact on their health. And I'd urge them to keep considering whether these strikes are really necessary and do everything they can to alleviate the impact it's going to have on people. And of course, the government, for its part, is being responsible in putting in place contingency measures to make sure we're well prepared to handle the disruption that is coming.
Let's talk about Rwanda. You had a victory in the High Court today. Many people are asking now, when are the flights going to take off? I mean, they've been promised for months and months. Is it going to happen soon?
Well, I welcome the decision of the court today. We've always maintained that our Rwanda policy is lawful. I'm pleased that was confirmed today. And this is just one part of our plan to tackle illegal migration. Last week I set out a very comprehensive approach to stopping the boats from coming to the UK. It's not going to be easy and we're not going to be able to do it overnight, but I'm confident that with the steps I laid out last week, we really can get to grips with illegal migration. Because I think what we all want to see and what I want to deliver is a system whereby if you come to the UK illegally, you will not have the right to stay, and we will be able to return you to your own country if it's safe, or a safe alternative like Rwanda. That's a common sense position, I think, of the vast majority of the British public. It's my position, and that's what I want to deliver as Prime Minister.
Jeremy Clarkson's been criticised in the last 24 hours or so. In fact, I think he's in many ways just apologising in the last couple of hours about comments he wrote in the Sunday Times yesterday regarding the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle. Do you feel that actually for lots of commentators that kind of misogyny and racism to a degree is acceptable in some of our newspapers or among some of our well-known commentators?
I think for everyone in public life, language matters. You asked about racism. Now, I've seen some of the things that have been said. I absolutely don't believe that Britain is a racist country, and I'd hope that as our nation's first British Asian Prime Minister, when I say that, it carries some weight. I'm really proud of our country, its culture, its resilience, its beauty, and actually it's an enormous privilege to champion Britain and indeed its institutions like the monarchy when I'm out and about on the world stage as I am here today.
And just very finally, again, someone's been criticised. It is Gary Neville for comments he made equating Qatari migrant workers with the nurses that have gone on strike. What do you think of that comparison? Many feel that it's unfair. He's not rowing back, though. He says it's entirely justified.
No, I don't think that's right at all, in fact. And if you look at our track record and my track record, as Chancellor, I've always done everything I can to support our NHS and indeed the wonderful people who work in it. I grew up in an NHS family. I spent my life working in my mum's pharmacy when I was younger. And if you look at what we did during COVID, we provided enormous support to the front line at a time when it comes to pay, when everyone else in the public sector experienced a pay freeze. The one group that was singled out for special treatment were the NHS workers, rightly, who received that support. But also beyond that, for nurses in particular, we've put in place nurses' bursaries when they're training to become nurses. The unions asked for a training budget once they qualified. And again, as Chancellor, we put that in place to give nurses the support they need. So, look, I know things are difficult at the moment for people up and down the country with inflation. Of course, I get that. That's why we've put an enormous amount of support in place for people's energy bills. £900 this winter for a typical family. That gives you a demonstration that we care about this. And we want to find a sensible way through on pay. But I think it's entirely right for me to stand here and say that we have treated everyone reasonably and fairly, and will continue to do that.
And you enjoyed the World Cup yesterday?
Yes, for the bits of it that I managed to catch in between my meetings and work, it was a fantastic World Cup final, great football match. Shame that we were not there, but in the absence of us being there, to see Mbappe and Messi go head to head was fantastic, and well deserved for Messi to get his World Cup.
Thank you, Prime Minister.